If copyright wasn't an issue, I think you know what song I'd start with. If you recognize this image, and, you know, this was by Dan Control. I believe this version of this image, which many of you are familiar with. We'll talk about it in a second. Artist Journal, February 14th, 2024, broadcasting from the totally anti-Valentine's Day city of Berlin, Germany. Wonderfully so, hilariously so. My name's Adrian Pocobelli. One of the small delights of moving to Berlin is you are not, expected to conform to the corporate holiday known as Valentine's Day, hilariously, but nevertheless, let me wish all of you out there, especially our North American friends, a happy Valentine's Day. I was thinking about my brother, actually, because it was him. I was very lucky as a kid having a 6-year-old older brother because I was introduced to this. Of course, now this is Blue Monday by New Order, the album cover, but from the 1988 version. Okay, so, and we'll look at the 1982 or 83 version in a second, both by Peter Saville, kind of legendary designer who did all of New Order's covers, did a lot of, I think all of Joy Division's covers, was kind of, the visual maestro, so to speak, of the factory records, right? And the whole hacienda, where you could argue, where a lot of our understanding and, of the rave party may have been to a certain degree, not entirely, and I'm sure this is very contentious with a lot of people, but there is definitely a contribution, let's say, from the hacienda there in Manchester, a legendary club that was, as far as I understand, owned and operated by Factory Records, who, of course, put this out in Joy Division's record. So it's all full circle here. Let's look at Dan Control's tweet here. So this is super interesting. And it didn't get a huge, look at this, not a huge amount of traction here, which made me wonder how many people actually recognize this. When I saw it, and then I saw Dan was doing a remix of it, I thought this was... for my little tabloid of the imagination here, I was like, thank you, and front page, thank you, Dan Control. And the fact that it didn't even get that much traction makes it even better from over here. These are on Foundation, as you see here, Dan Control, Blue Monday, so this here, and number 53, 17 Januar 1900, so 17th of January 1900 in German. New Order and Ugo Rondinone. We are all remixers. Worthy, almost a manifesto-like statement there from Dan Control. Now available on Foundation, and let's just read a little bit of background here. Visiting the National Gallery of Modern and Contemporary Art in Rome, I came across this work by Ugo Rondinone. So this work on the left here. Number 53, and seen and reviewed in the countless times I've been there. This last one struck me a lot. Simplicity, what else do we have? Simplicity, mastery, beauty. I immediately thought of Blue Monday by New Order, and I couldn't help but connect things. A homage, a connection, the beauty of vector simplicity. Good eye, Dan. Very good eye. I took the same decentralized position of the vector circles as in Ugo Rondinone's work and repeated it in that of Blue Monday. Interesting. So as to create a connection, communion, and dialogue between the two, making them a diptych, taking already existing works, already present, and reshuffling the cards. We are all remixers. And so here you see the work that Dan Control saw in the Contemporary Art Gallery in Rome. I've never been there. Interestingly, I'm going to Rome in April, late April. So maybe I'll go then. I think it's kind of long overdue. So here again, you see, and here's the 1988 version of Blue Monday. The re-release, and those remixes, by the way, don't get a ton of attention. Almost like if you remember, for those that know it, it sounds like there's a sample of what sounds like someone chomping on an apple or something in that one. They're pretty fun remixes, and interestingly, remixes of their own track, released, I guess, 5 or 6 years later. So Stephen Morris. So here's the album cover. And I have this theory on this album just very quickly. So, because we're discussing Joy Division, and here we are at New Order. Of course, New Order came out of Joy Division after the lead singer Ian Curtis committed suicide. Then you have New Order, which became a huge band, bigger than, arguably bigger than Joy Division. And so my theory, if you read the book called Touching from a Distance by Deborah Curtis, I'm not sure if it's the wife that Ian Curtis left behind. I assume because of the last name, right? So probably the wife, the widow of Ian Curtis, wrote a book that I read something like 20 years ago, maybe more. And what I remember in that book is there was a Ziploc bag that the band had, that Joy Division had, with all of the lyrics in it. And I kind of suspect a lot of the songs, of the first New Order songs, came out of that Ziploc bag, is what I suspect. And then you have also another kind of interesting idea. I originally thought it was a Joy Division song, honestly, Blue Monday. They were moving in a dance direction. My kind of thinking about it today, it's probably a hybrid of Ian Curtis lyrics or largely Ian Curtis lyrics, maybe even a drum beat, because they were very tribal drum beats that Joy Division would do. It kind of has a similar kind of feel to it. And Joy Division was getting more upbeat. So I suspect it's kind of a hybrid. Maybe the skeleton of the song existed. The lyrics especially kind of say Ian Curtis to me. Anyway, very cool work here from Dan Control. So here it is on Foundation. Blue Monday. Very cool. And I have to say, I quite like what Dan did with the crop here, because we were looking at the single, or at least the single is kind of like a square, but here what it seems like there's a dialogue, as Dan was saying, between these two works. It seems like Dan took this work as the source, or at least the original of this, and then built a similar version of Blue Monday. So a fairly conceptual work here from Dan Control. Cool, references, cool appropriation, we might say, a cool homage, a cool connection, and even this beautiful kind of manifesto-like statement, we are all remixers. Beautiful. So, and how true is that? Even before, we had the thing called a remix, even, through the ages, there is, Dante reusing Virgil, for example, and on you could go. This is the original 1982 sleeve, and I thought this was kind of hilarious. Maybe 1983. I thought this was hilarious of this single, because here it kind of relates to our scene. Here's a diskette, 5.25-inch disc, where the record went in. So this is the original record sleeve, which they legendarily lost money on. Who knows if they actually did? It wouldn't shock me. Released in 1983, and they were able to finally break free, and that's probably still their biggest track, one would think, of New Order. Don't want to go too far on this, because not everybody is super down with the New Order Joy Division talk. But very interesting. Again, following the suicide of Ian Curtis in May 1980, the band regrouped and released one album, Movement, which I actually quite enjoy, by the way, which was dismissed as a hollow copy of their original sound. There is a sense of Ian Curtis lyrics again, and even, I'm sure they had leftover tracks. With Blue Monday, the band embraced synthesizer technology, sequencers, and the sound of the New York dance floor. They had spent much of 1982 touring and heard a lot of incredible tracks at New York City's cutting-edge clubs. And then, of course, there's the designer Peter Saville. And it's about the disk drive, actually. He went to the studio and said, "What's this?" And it's a floppy disk. Haven't you seen them? I asked him if I could have it and drove back to London listening to Blue Monday on a cassette. But staring at this floppy disk, I knew there was an intrinsic link between the disk and their new direction. So this kind of interesting link here with technology from the designer of all of Joy Division's covers, and as far as I understand, all of New Order's covers. Here's just a quick look. If you're not familiar, of course, many of you, if not all of you, are familiar with this image now. There was a time when Joy Division, like when I was a kid, it wasn't really cool. Like, again, talking about my brother, we had Still at home. We didn't have the other ones, but we had Still, which was kind of one of the least accessible of Joy Division's albums. I had it in grade 6, and the thing that was cool then was Guns N' Roses' Use Your Illusion. So hopelessly obscure, So again, it's awesome that eventually Joy Division did get kind of what you might consider to be a more mainstream acceptance. You see the variation here, and look at this great little design. A true artist, Peter Saville. Like, and even I think there are art exhibitions that happen every so often, like design taken to the point of it being true poetry. Did he do this Happy Mondays? That would be impressive. I don't think he did. Maybe he did. Factory Records, Peter Saville. Not sure. Of course, this is Technique, another underrated, but let's not go too far on that, but a great designer and a great way to start. Dan Control. Exclusive. That is brilliant work. Kind of relating to our discussion here, and I'm still trying to figure out how I relate to this comment here. Very few artists have communicated anything profoundly different in a digital medium. I think you could say in any new medium, but let's continue. That hasn't already been expressed in other formats. Maybe the constant speed of new technology is the problem. Artists get stuck reacting to the tech or just become a product of it. Yeah, so for me personally, I don't really... the tech has become very much like, if you look at the history of art, I think you can go all the way back to the cave painters, right? To the very, very, very beginning, or to the Venus. It's not the Venus of Lascaux, but the that little Venus sculpture that's like however many tens of thousands of years old. Technology is there at the very beginning, I would argue. And then you see oil painting. So, in a sense, in human nature, you could say is a constant. So in a sense, it's almost like this. I think this is being leveled as a kind of criticism of sorts, but I kind of agree with it, but I don't see it as a criticism. Very few artists have communicated anything profoundly different in a digital medium that hasn't already been expressed in other formats. In a sense, again, human nature is similar. But I'm not, but the digital medium has provided us with, I would argue, it's hard, again, I as I used to say when I started this program like a year and a half ago, it's like a Cambrian explosion, what's going on here, of creativity. And again, celebrating this, digital medium here. So again, this is kind of framed as a problem. Maybe the constant speed of new technology is the problem. But I would argue the digital medium is what's kind of keeping these stories and themes that we return to interesting. It's sort of like love songs, will probably be with us for another 1,000 years. It's how they're going to be done or performed, or what kind of music tech. And it'll probably be deeply related to where the tech is in 1,000 years. So again, I don't know if I'd say that's a feature, not a bug, but it's tempting. It's like the digital medium is basically, that's what's allowing us to actually say it in a slightly different way, in a way that maybe some of us relate to. Again, we've talked about the important influence of video games on the arts. So anyways, very interesting and provocative comment from James Bloom, which I thought kind of fit really nicely, actually, with the Dan Control. Right, because we're all remixers, right? So just a brilliant comment there from Dan Control as well. Coming up in very shortly here, I need to finish this show. Kalo is going to be on, of course, who writes that great newsletter on digital art and NFTs. Really thrilled to have Kalo on the show. We recorded about a week and a half ago. Last Monday, we did an interview for his podcast. Should be out in a week or two. And I was on there, and now thrilled to have Kalo on here. So that should be great. Come meet Kalo, who has this kind of whole other kind of digital art kind of, world and different people. So all to say, that should be really good. And come meet Kalo. You probably won't see this by the time, or by the time, it'll probably have happened by the time you see this, but just wanted to, in case I get this up really quickly, just wanted to mention. Now, speaking of quick, we won't be able to go all the way into Santiago's comment here. Crashed up. That's a whole lot of wires at the beginning. Nice looking to someone's studio. That is Klaus, referring to Klaus there in the studio. This is a pretty in-depth comment, and I'm not sure, actually. Maybe I return to this at another show because it's really interesting, but it's hard for me to go through this entire comment without taking 5 or 10 minutes here. But thank you for the comment, Santiago, and thank you. Perfect beginning with that piece regarding to Klaus's work, and I should have brought this up. Klaus was saying, maybe I should bring that up. Maybe I always have a little tricky on desktop to find the retweets with quotes in them. Maybe I'll try and figure that. But I put them on my page. Maybe we can find it. So Klaus's piece really resonated, and we're going to look here. I'll bring up Klaus's comment here on how he felt, because he said he held on to it for a month and wasn't even sure about it. And then for so many people, I got a few comments saying, what a wonderful piece to begin with. And Santiago in there too. I was looking at them recently, going to keep watching the show. So thank you, Santiago, for the comments. Toronto, Berlin, this is hilarious. So shout out to Tobias. And I think this is, I brought up the image. You see there's this little image here. These are the people who cut my hair. Actually, in Berlin. This is Toronto, Berlin. There's Tobias. There's Michelle. Those are the architects of the sculpture that resides on top of my skull here. And there is the whole team there. So hilarious. Big shout out. I assume that was Tobias there. Hair looks nice, Adrian. Hilarious. Retro Manny. You just got to show up and not care. Yeah, referring to the hair. Hair looks cool. Thank you. Regarding your discussion, and thank them. Toronto, Berlin. Regarding your discussion around Strange Things comment on about object, it's really interesting to see how social metrics are starting to matter less and less. At least it seems that way to me. Maybe the old social proof dynamic is no longer relevant. Art can be appreciated by other artists on socials for free, but are collectors starting to bypass these platforms and just keep up with their favorite artists on marketplaces? Yes, I think technology is disrupting to it. I don't know if social proof will ever disappear. And of course, social proof being the review, is your classic example. The testimony, very, very, probably the most powerful form of marketing, other than just sheer repetition, is social proof. Someone else that you like or respect recommending it. We've discussed social proof a lot, or for a long time, let's say, on this show. Is it no longer relevant? I think it's still relevant, but maybe what I see happening is a kind of, to your point, and I think your observation, I agree with it, I think it's starting to fragment. I mean, we see it in our own collecting, we see it in our own ways of collecting, right? I mean, am I going to Jerry Saltz to find out what I should be buying or selling or buying on object? Of course not, right? Where am I going to, so this is very interesting. We're also seeing another dynamic where I would argue the work of art is taking on where the individual piece is taking on more significance than maybe it used to with physical artists. I brought this up on a space a few weeks ago, where if you have a single, I'd say, in this space, digitally, your work is judged more according to the individual piece. The fact that it's a certain artist matters, but doesn't matter as much as I'd argue in the physical realm, where it's like, oh, it's a Picasso, who cares? I'll buy this ceramic, all good. But in the digital space, it seems like that individual work matters a little bit more. But our collectors, so interesting question. A little behind, so we'll be spending the weekend binging. Awesome. Best hair. Thank you, PP. Again, so big shout out to Toronto, Berlin. I just went there because I was like, oh, maybe that's meant to be, looking for a hairdresser as after a year of moving here and kind of going to random places. Okay, continuing on, John Cates. So comments on last show. First, it's okay to copy. So we're kind of back to Dan Control here. Believing in the process of copying as much as you can with all your heart is a good place to start. Phil Morton, 1973. Remember I was discussing, I think it was last episode, this idea of remixing to the point where it's unrecognizable? It's an interesting question. referring to music, but you could look at this. So here we're back to this idea of copying and remixing. What's new? To James Bloom's point. Cult Leader, I love the first piece. It really was bookmarked. Thank you, Ray Kays. And Jake Studios, and yeah, thank you for the comments, Ray Kays. Jake Studios, always glad to hear from others regarding my pieces. I don't usually put words and descriptions onto it, and somehow looking for what people think feels about the piece. Pocobelli is doing great work. Thank you. Valdez, enjoyed the show. Thank you, 8-0. And thank you, Jada. And thank you, Bosque. Great selection. Really happy you chose our slides. We will sure go on making these infinite collages, and we have more today. Great, Dr. Version, great show. Klaus is on fire with this composition series, so big reaction. And he was the one who picked up that first work off of last episode that we opened the show with. Love the new Pedro Juana you featured as well. And thank you, Ranik Steer. Great to hear from you. Gogo Lightus. Zuozo, enjoyed listening while working on a new piece. Like the comments on nostalgia and copies. Made me think of art as a creative copying device. This idea is really resonating, isn't it? Because it's an interesting discussion here. And again, we think of James Bloom, we think of Dan Control. Dan Control celebrating on one side, James Bloom kind of criticizing seemingly on the other. That repeats and brings back previous artworks to new contexts and forms, as nostalgia brings back precious past moments to the present. And we could even see, AI to a certain degree as kind of sampling from whatever image, loosely termed tradition of images, whatever's online, and then kind of re-releasing it back as some sort of, I want to say mingled substance there, but that's not exactly right. Anyways, let's continue. Cider. Appreciate it once again, Poco. And the idea of Cider Truck was taken, by the way, from Machine, by the way Machine executed her cars. By the idea of putting cider in there came from 500 Arts. Anyway, much love. Thank you, Cider. Great to hear from you. And Low Trips, thank you. Shout out to Toronto, Berlin, and Skull Takes. I love Klaus's analog works. Was nice to get a look inside the studio. The Minesweeper piece by RJ is so good. We're going to see a few more here. Thanks for another great show. Hilarious. This looks like Mr. Rogers. Hilarious. And finally here, beautiful prints by Uxing. This is Kells. Somehow reminds me of Warhol's oxidation paintings on music. Is there an old vid somewhere on your Goa days? That's an awesome question. That's an awesome question. You could almost do a whole show. And I mean like regular show on music. But that would be, people have such strong opinions about music that, no, I don't is the answer to the question, but maybe you put out a little series. It's a very interesting idea. Thank you, Kels. Wano, and really appreciate the kind words. Great show as always. Was unfamiliar with the work of Zigmar Polka. Thank you for the awesome reference, and here is the great Zigmar Polka. Using bed sheets or some sort of, probably bed sheets as a source to paint on. So thank you, everybody, Denise Guitar and Amir Hossein. I brought it up here. I wanted to bring Klaus's comments, and then we'll dive into the art. And let me see. Here it is. I was spending the day at the studio and was pretty stoked to see such an extensive review of my works. Thank you so much, Pocobelli. About the opening piece, I was actually quite hesitant about minting the Composition 126. And this is something, we were just talking about this with PP Universal, who is still adamant that the rock will not be unburnt or, remade or reminted. But where I liked it, Ile liked it, and this idea that maybe the artists aren't necessarily the best judges of their own work. And I say that thinking about myself. And here's Klaus. I was actually quite hesitant about minting Composition 126 in the first place. It was sitting and waiting on the editing desk, I think, for over a month and couldn't decide if it's good to go or not, which is usually a good sign just to put it out in the public if the doubtful feeling is extended enough. And I think, for me, it might have been my favorite. I was as soon as I saw it, I was like, ooh, I have something to start this show with. So just very interesting there. And I think we have enough comments here for the show. Okay, let's continue here. Kayvon, co-founder of Foundation. Today, we're announcing exhibitions, the best way to present, buy, and sell digital art. NFTs and digital art are a perfect match. There's no way to sell digital art without NFTs. But not all NFTs are digital art. All to say, you see this formatting here? Edit exhibition. It looks like, I think I was discussing this actually when I was talking about Object One, like what if you could start to make wide, I don't know if they listened to that show or not, it's probably just random, but what if you could just start to customize the size and where you actually start getting closer and closer to this idea of a digital art exhibition by being able to make it larger, move the text around. And it looks like they have a what you see is what you get kind of editor where you can drag and drop, or at least something close to that. So isn't that interesting? So this idea of exhibitions, here's some more examples here. Isn't this interesting? So really customizing, we're seeing an increased customization of the space, which maybe gives, galleries meaning in this digital art world where they seem to be kind of left out because they're always the physical space for showing the work, right? Zora, we've made it easy to buy and sell on the secondary, place offers or buy instantly, list or sell now, browse and accept offers. So more iterations here from Zora in this exciting, friendly competition here between Zora, Object, and Foundation. What's kind of great about it is it seems to me that, and I'm just speculating, but it seems to me they're pushing each other forward. And what's good about it is, if new players come on the scene, they're going to be way behind just by virtue of all the work that these guys have done, that these people have done. So very interesting. Ivan Hugo wondering about Ivan's Zora drops not minting. I think this is because the value of Zora work is now completely unclear and their policies, in my opinion, make this worse. Don't get me wrong, I like Zora, but I like the positioning as a Web3 media platform and not an NFT marketplace. In my opinion, they're ideal for things like Pocobelli Artist Video Journal, because in this area they are unique and suitable with the comment function. Interesting. But this whole game with L2 Ethereum coin, to me, makes them an attempt to sit on two chairs. They're not perceived as an established but expensive Ethereum and not liquid and artsy as Tezos. So interesting comments here. I think my initial thoughts are Zora's been great for artists. Like, as you see, if you get 200 mints, that's real money. Oftentimes you get more from Zora just based on the amounts that you mint. So, but it's tricky, and I'm not sure how they run the homepage, right? So, because I think it's all about, to a certain degree, being on the homepage. At least it was when they had the other layout. So, all very interesting to see. Now, it's saying those who advertise on the main page have a lot of mints. So I don't know if you can advertise. Interesting. But at the same time, as for me, this further confuses the value of the works because multiple editions lead to depreciation or at least difficulty in the resale. So again, saying Zora works really well for content creators and musicians, but maybe the visual arts, it's a different matter. Interesting. Just interesting comments. Popple with a work in progress. And we're going to have to speed up here because we actually have a space that I have to prepare for in, 45 minutes here. So we're going to run. Here is the work in progress. We saw the original from Popple. So just a clue here I love how the dithering comes after and the gradients here from Popple's new work there. So very cool there. Look at the response to Popple there. Huge following online there. Psycho at Art Fair Tokyo. Now, let me just see if I can translate this. Our gallery will be exhibiting at Art Fair Tokyo that will be held in early March. This year, we're going to be exhibiting new works by digital artist Ayako Ibara, also known as Score or Saiko. And here we see Saiko working in the studio in Touch Designer, I believe. So very cool there. And here and let me just close that. And here we see Saiko in Japanese. And here, look at how great this looks. So outside. So again, another kind of physical rendition here. And we see the Kira process at work. I almost cried when I thought my work would become someone else's memories. It was little girls who were having fun in front of my work, taking pictures, and people passing by said, "It's beautiful." So really nice to, again, show your work in public here. So here is one version and a little bit more from Saiko. And there is a link too, interestingly. So generative art. So again, doing great there with the art in public. Looks like a beautiful day there in Tokyo, if I'm not mistaken. So very cool there. Let's continue. Let me just close that. Let's glitch it. So Aitso using the camera here from Donia AKA, and pretty nice pixelation going on here. If you ask me, kind of makes me want one of these cameras here. And here's another one by Bleak, and we'll see, and just kind of up close with a little bit of animation in here. So pretty cool. And continuing on here is Ripcash in the gallery. And you wonder, is this the aluminum? Not sure. Quite vibrant colors here. Focus. So enigmatic here, but cool, very large work here by Ripcash. And just again showing how, pixel art can really be stretched to a huge size. And it looks pretty awesome when you make it big. Makes me wonder if this is a screen. It almost looks like a screen rather than a screen print, doesn't it? Very interesting here. And here's Demon Ego in the studio. And again, we see that familiar cutting board underneath and just a really cool, again, working physically and digital. So here we see some physical ink work. And here's Element Lee, cardboard engraving details. So working in cardboard again with the laser engraving. And you see all sorts of wonderful things going on here, as you can see. And then this kinda just like, everyday material that, is infused with all this value here. And you just gotta love. Makes me wonder, I think Element Lee might have their own laser engraver. We're going to see some of Element Lee's new works here. And here, I'd like to present you Gâteau Chien d'Amour. This is Bonsai Tokyo, a lino cut print that we've created for St. Valentine's. I don't want to say too much, but it was probably the most involved project for Sasha, as it had very practical purpose. So here we see a lino cut, which is very similar to woodcut, but just easier to cut into. And it's all this kind of random stuff here that often happens in a lino cut. See around the side and also the roughness. So it's another way of translating works and giving them kind of this poeticness that comes with randomization that you see here. So interesting work here. Looks good, hey? And you generally want to keep it, here it's two colors, nice and simple. You want to keep it simple because it can get complicated. Into the digital art we go. So RJ with some really interesting pieces here. Cool concept. The internet is our garden now after Claude Monet, Water Lilies and Japanese Bridge. So a late Monet, fairly late, not too late. And here you see an interesting kind of screen green outline, again, reminiscent of the Apple IIe to a certain degree monitor, and then some noise and some negative space here, interestingly. And the noise is animated, so you get that great contrast again between the movement and the static pixels here. Nicely done. Doesn't need to be too perfect in a sense, like as you see here. Just nice outline, good to go. So this is 5 Tezos, already selling quite a few here. There are 3 left. This is an edition of 10. So putting out quite a few. The internet is our church now. I thought a pretty cool series here. Of course, this is Van Gogh. So we're back to pastiche, but really remixing. We're back to remixing. Isn't this interesting? After Vincent van Gogh, 1890, last year of his life there. I think I mentioned this on a previous episode, but if you didn't know, Van Gogh did all the famous paintings that we know in the last 3 years of his life. So isn't that interesting? And then you go to the potato peelers, that was maybe 4 years. And then, there's maybe a couple of years before of some of the earlier works. Isn't that interesting? Anyways, continuing. The internet is our lover now. Who's this? John William Waterhouse, Echo and Narcissus. Interesting. So I believe a pre-Raphaelite here, which was a group in the 19th century that wanted to go back to pre-Raphael type values in Italian painting. Isn't that kind of provocative? So they were called the pre-Raphaelites, as far as I understand. If If we had more time, I would show you the original. All to say, though, more cool work from RJ. This is a 1 of 1 for 69 Tezos. So that is cool. And the internet is our home now. This is after Edward Hopper, High Noon, 1949. And you just got to love that green, don't you? Beautiful green there. And again, there's something just really beautiful about this series, isn't there? Beautiful pastiche series. And also, so we saw this over the Creation Atom, Mona Lisa, almost turning these into like programming type format here. And so here's the Mona Lisa, and so done with Minesweeper. It's interesting. RJ was kind of teasing this series out maybe a month ago, a month and a half ago, and it didn't really catch on, and now it seems to be doing very well. Look at this. So maybe change the pricing. It's only a Tezos, but now, edition of 15, but doing pretty well. So maybe change the pricing. Again, the whole kind of, adjust it to the market. And as I look at it, if something doesn't sell, maybe that's a nice way to do it, is you take it away, you get people to forget about it a little bit, and then you bring it back, and they don't even remember what it was before, and then you can kind of reintroduce it if you screw up the pricing. And I'm not saying that's what happened here. But kind of interesting that RJ brought it back. Here's a Pepe, Mine's Sweet Pepe, and Girl with Pearl Earring, of course, after Vermeer. So playing, of course, RJ, an expert or studying, postmodernism. So we always have this kind of hyper-advanced kind of pastiche concept here. A lot of concept going on here, isn't there? A lot of, interesting discussion on copies, remixing, all of this stuff. Here's Malware. This is by Uxine, sending a free copy over to John Cates, and who we saw the first comment there. So doing well here as usual with Uxine. Let's just bring this in. Kind of a slight non-finito here in the writing, and very nice painting here with the Marlboro Man lighting a cigarette with the kind of crypto art skull. Nice and loose, hey? We're talking about rawness here. And it's very interesting how it's colored here, because we're seeing, it's almost like a scumbling of sorts on top of this. Very interesting. It's almost like the coloring, or there's like a scumbling on top of this, if you know what I'm saying. This greenish gray on top of the purple. Very interesting. And of course that matte black, and almost missed this great writing down here. Love it. Malware by Uxine. So edition of 33, and on Object. Beautiful painting here, of course, by Rare, which is based on is it David? And they're, of course, now doing the Tesla robot rather than the death of who is this again? This is that I want to say Jean-Louis David or something, and it's a very famous painting. I'm sure most of you know it here. And of course, instead of the Boston Dynamics dog, we have the Tesla robot. And again, keeping that kind of corporate feel on the Tesla there, which I quite like, kind of helps with the contrast. And there, Optimus Rare signing probably like... and then there's a knife, and then... So we'll have to... I think it had to do with the French Revolution, the original. And so anyway, we'll look more into that. I'm sure we'll get more info too. Continuing on, of 1914, Communication. So more interesting experimentation here. A 1 of 1. This sold again, and selling to 1 of 1 for only $6.50 there. So more interesting work here by Nov 1914. Just constant experimentation here. There are other works here too. Look at this. Portone. This sold to DJ Kiro for 7 Tezos. And you see here, keeping the transform tool from almost doing a screenshot, it seems like, a Photoshop there. So pretty interesting there. Incorporating it into the work. Look at this wild radical flower there too. Different textures. And here is Sirena, likely meaning siren, referring to mermaids. Which, of course, sirens in the Odyssey there. And look at this when you look up close. So a lot of work put into this one, kind of a more formal piece, we might be tempted to think, and just very cool. This is 9 Tezos, still available. And here is Hasdrubal Waffle with a pretty cool work, Interloper. This is sold for 0.069 to Jack Mashka. I think yes, listed for half an ETH there. That would have been awesome, but still doing very well. Again, ETH is at $2,600, so not a bad take there at all. 140, 150 bucks. And here, a cool character here lifting weights, and then someone coming in through the window, or is it a painting? An interesting space created here, so just more cool work by Hasdrubal Waffle, at least on Foundation. And here's Mumble Boy, another cool composition, LAZ Rainbow Man. This is for Tezos edition of 3. So huge amount of output here from Mumble Boy. Pretty cool. And I assume most of this is new, because I remember at a certain point, Mumble Boy was putting older works, and then said Mumble Boy was putting newer works. So I assume these are newer works. Pretty cool. Nice combination, again, of collage and digital kind of workmanship. Interesting in the middle there with this thing, hey? Almost a drop shadow in there, interestingly. And that is for Tezos, edition of 3. Here's Cider. Pretty cool work here, isn't it? Great texture as usual. I'm not sure if we have a clue. She's a little shy, so maybe it's a dog. And this kind of looks like a wolf or a dog here, and maybe there's another dog here. So just beautifully distorted work from Cider. Again, huge audience there too. 100 retweets on that. Yuri J with some interesting works here. I think this is a series called Conversations. And here you actually see text. Something I'm actually super interested in. I love how this is all being treated here. So I didn't realize, actually, this is a really cool exploration of text, isn't it? That's my name. Look at that, Pocobelli. So maybe, remember that work that I think it was Yuri J, put on, I think was made on Zora? Wonder if that was the source here. Second Conversation. That's hilarious. So finding myself all over the blockchain here. So anyways, really cool exploration of writing here. Second Conversation, Yuri J. This is 42 Tezos on Object here. And here is another one, First Conversation. So not exactly like the other works that were being remixed and filled in differently, we might say, with kind of similar outlines. These ones look a little different. It's just treating text in a certain way. It's an exploration of the treatment of text. Very cool. Here's another one, Chill Conversation. And there are more, but just wanted to kind of just touch on a few here as we see. So very interesting work from Yuri J. This is 69 Tezos, edition of 1. And here's Mikael Noelsen, and doing really well here. Huge audience on Solana with a work here. And again, a nice digital abstract, expressionist type painting here. Exploring the digital lines here, digital brushstrokes here in this work. Recognizably Mikael's, and continuing on Walk with an edition of 1, and this is probably sold. I loved how minimal this one was. Just the shadow, the ghost of a door here in this series here, 1016, and that went for 3 Tezos, interestingly, to Vec, Vec.is, and here's 1017. Again, this looks more like a fireman here in this 911 work, and this is 4 Tezos. So going for actually, probably great buys here. Again, these are one of ones, and beautiful work, isn't it? So continuing on, one of one. They picked up this piece from Agnes E.G., who is Agnes Evergrace. And I thought this was a pretty cool work here. I think we've seen maybe their work before. The name rings familiar here. Fun is infinite. Click here to download. Let's see what one of one said. Falling in the humor insane category, we present. I'm no longer smoking. The artist's description of this piece sums it up nicely for us. So, and you can read that there. So all to say, just an interesting, wild experimental piece. Leeches of Pebble Cove. This is Blue Retina with a new one. Welcome to Pebble Cove, the end of your sufferings, Magic Traveler. This is 33 Tezos now on secondary. Also has quite a large collector base on Object here. And classic colors here by Blue Retina here. These kind of the warm red and that kind of internet blue, that web blue. And here we see some feet here on what looks like kind of a stone floor here. So interesting with the 24 there and the fish sign. Leeches of Pebble Cove. And so this sold out on primary for 22 Tezos each, edition of 21. So nice sale there. Figments, our friend Cap'n is back on the scene with Bothermord, and this was released February 13th, already sold out at 10 Tezos each. And I feel like the market's, getting more and more, like, I wouldn't call this a soft market anymore. It's like that little lull we had seemed to last about 6 weeks. It's not a soft market anymore. Again, because there was, and using Figments here as a gauge, because there's a point, and it could depend on the individual work, but there was a point like a month ago where, this wouldn't sell out right away. This is selling out right away. Okay, so we don't have the exact dates. Oh, here we do, 8/12. Is that 2 hours? Within 2 hours, Figments sells out at 10 Tezos each, edition of 10. I mean, not bad at all. Beautiful work. Here's Elna Frederick, also totally recognizable as her work, Grief. And here we have, I guess you'd call it Sisyphus type character, who was, the torture of Sisyphus was, of course, if I'm remembering right, bringing the stone all the way up the hill to the point where it just goes all the way down. This was like the punishment of Sisyphus, who I think, and I'm going on a leap here, who stole, or Prometheus, wasn't it? Not sure. I was going to say who stole the fire from Zeus, but that's Prometheus. Getting my myths mixed up here. We'll look. I'm going to try and remember to look at because I think this is Sisyphus, isn't this? Grief. So selling, edition of 10, selling for 50 Tezos each on Object. Jake Studios, The End is Sphere, so a preview, I believe, and here we see some drones with some eyeballs and classic clouds here, kind of light blue this time, and then interesting kind of gradients in the background here with what look like rocks, and then, so again, very suggestive and just associative. And look at this great suitcase with JPEGs in it. This you're almost tempted to think of as Jake Studios, a portrait of Jake Studios. The End is Sphere, and this person with a baseball bat, maybe to steal the suitcase of JPEGs. Let's continue here. Boo Boy, party list. And here, so kind of a party work. This was minted February 13th, yesterday. And again, has this great kind of textured background here. And we see this drawing, this digital drawing, grenade, money, and a party, people with masks and everything, and even laurels here. So interesting. Would you call that a crown of laurels? I'm blanking on that. And here's some swimmers. So all sorts of wildness going on in this work. Party list. And we have another one too. Life is Joke. And this is reserve of 1.65. And this is at auction for 1.65. A reserve or buy now for 2. And here's the work. And I wonder if you get a physical. It almost looks physical. And because I know Boo Boy was working with physical NFT and physical painting, acrylic on linen. Nice work, 100 by 130, so actually quite not a small work, bigger than I expected. So this is a physical. Let's just check the other and see if it's physical. This is also NFT and physical painting, 120 by 160 centimeters. So you get both when you buy it. Interesting. And here is Seba Sestaro, who I do follow, that is X, Glitch on X. And here, quite a cool piece here too, with these figures here in the middle of this kind of dreamlike line drawing of almost look like stretched out lemons, but could be anything. And then these just kind of a dreamy work here with this figure almost repeated at the bottom and Road to the Core. Interesting. And here is Katarina Create Rainbow Dream. So another work here. This is edition of 10, so super prolific here, and selling for only a Tezos each. Interesting kind of change here, or at least variation, let's call it, on the outlines here. So colored outlines, more experimentation here. Big flowers here, and big kind of the figure taking up almost the entire canvas here. Almost going to the edge here, surrounded by flowers and everything. Cool colored background there too, kind of a light, I think a light cream. That doesn't look like white, does it? To great effect. Rainbow Dream, cool title. Continuing on, let's look at Julie Rose, who we haven't seen from for a long time, but would fit nicely in this illustration show with these other illustrated works here, kind of looking like plants here. And here, again, just looking like kind of a sketch with plants, kind of digital illustration, should we say, digitally colored and everything. Just interesting piece here. And here is Santiago Ruao, The Stars, new work on Zora. So interesting piece here. And again, we're talking about the asymmetric writing. And so interesting, adding a little bit of a three-dimensional feel with these kind of drop shadows of sorts. Interesting little dots on top. So this is on Zora, doing quite well there. Interesting title. Here is Mo, S-H-I-T, Life is Castle. Interesting experimental work here this is a month old. So this was tweeted out. And this was on Zora. So just kind of a cool work. I like the video game kind of motif or feel to these different kind of sunflowers here. So interesting. So this is on secondary now. So, and here is I believe a newer one here. And look at this. Mo is doing very well here. We've been tracking Mo's followers now at 5,725 followers. So Mo, who I do follow, by the way, is doing very well here, putting out a ton of images and really building a base here. And here it is, I assume, on Zora. Let's see how it does. Let's see if this is translating, like in a sense, interestingly, one minted. But that's usually the minter on Zora now. So it's interesting but it's doing, I mean, there is a point. Remember when Popple hit like 2 or 3 million views, or 4 million, was it? Like a huge amount of views, whereas the point where it's almost like the views are as worth as, is a way of attributing value as much as the money to a certain degree. Or at least, so anyway, very interesting there. Might be worth sneaking in to mint this. So 20, but you got 28 days. Interesting piece here. Here is Human Boy now on Solana on exchange.art, putting out a series here. Midjourney and GIMP. So this is AI. I guess we could have put this in the AI section here. So just an interesting GIF here using AI and GIMP. And here we start to see some of those textures here. Is this Midjourney? Because it almost reminds me of those stable diffusion textures we've been noticing here. And you can see the whole series here on Solana. A few static works at the bottom and then some animated ones on top. And here is Muji Family Evening. So another computer here and another test and another, sorry, I was getting weird sounds. That is outside. And another monitor here with very interesting, beautiful, large scale, almost like a disco ball here. Large scale pixels here, and then contrasting with this shine, always keeping it very advanced in the textures, almost these digital textures. Look at how these disk drives here, also over here, beautiful colors, great sense of color from Muji. Family Evening, interesting title with a little underscore there. Edition of 20 selling out. Maybe with Bitcoin above $50,000, people are like, this is interesting, isn't it? It was strong market. This is kind of an edgy work by Lorna Mills. I believe this is sign language for abortion, if I'm not mistaken. So this is an edgy work. Minister's Baby, created for Refraction Miami 2023. And is this sold out? This is sold out. So, there are still some left. There are still 2 left. So again, it's tempting to call this a strong market. Ugo. So that is Lorna Mills, and that is on Object. Ugo with a work here, just a dog posted on X, interestingly. And here is Manidal with P with the 1. And let's actually make this large. P with the 1 doing the music. Pretty fun work. I love Manidal's work. There's something just beautiful and kind of fun and innocent and really satisfying about it. And there's the ducks going alongside. I mean, it's just super charming. And who doesn't like cats? Well, I guess a lot of people actually. Talk to the Moon. And so here's, Now, I believe what Manidal is doing here is making 1-bit versions on Zora. Kind of like, again, we're playing with this remix and making copies, but here is, I believe, is what's going on as far as I remember. And 270 minted. So a nice way of reworking a work, and black and white looks awesome, right? So just very cool. Here's another work in progress here. Let's see what it says. Here's my latest process of new pixel per pixel art, 1-bit X music with P with the 1. See you soon on our Zora. So very cool here as well, and almost cool Polaroid kind of format here. Cats giving each other a massage there. And here, of course, is Element Lee with a work called Rail. And so another interesting kind of minimal pixel art work, again, probably made on the phone. Here's a bit of a zoom in here. Of course, we saw the cardboard at the start with the laser engraving, also by Element Lee. Here's Chaz. I'm going to have to speed up a little bit here, and it looks like Space Invaders on an arcade, and there you see it at the top there, Space. And so very cool there. And just another arcade, and I believe this was an airdrop. 100 editions, yeah, this was sent out. One was sent to me. And yeah, this went to all previous collectors, I think. Very cool there. And here's Green Ginger, who was doing a few interesting experiments. This one kind of stood out to me, which is Stonehenge, displaying Stonehenge with 23, I guess, being maybe the year. When did this come out? 2024. And this is number 23 of, I think, this series here. We'll open it up here. So as you can see, the Stonehenge rocks here. This is an edition of 1 for 17 Tezos. Has anybody bought it? Actually, this is, now it's being bid on. I think it's at $22.50. So it's at auction. Very cool there. So a whole bunch of 1 of 1s, interestingly. Maybe these are going at auction. Very cool. Nice pyramids there. New Year's celebration with the pyramids of Giza. The Great Pyramid of Giza. Very cool. How much did that go for? 9 Tezos. So just cool series there. NBSWWIT with an animated abstract here. Kind of has a pixel theme to it. This was dropped on X. Pretty original look here, especially with contrasting with these kind of soft gradients in the background in the orange. And here's Lucas Lejeune with a new work, Ship Fragment. This came out February 13th. And as you can see, almost like a rocket or like a spaceship here, kind of falling apart and coming back together in space. Interesting piece. This is 6 Tezos, and that sold to Gogolitis edition of 10. And here is another one, 1 day left, so kind of a more of a, how would you call it? It's like a mandala. At the center of the mandala here, working, I think, with programming. In these. So another work by Lucas Lejeune, very interesting. Kind of like this style of programming, one gets the sense. So this is Coma Teba processing, and here it looks like just posting the code, interestingly. I'm surprised Twitter actually lets you post the code like that. Sometimes I think they get worried about scripts, is why I say that, inserted into, say, a tweet or something. But let's look here. So just kind of more interesting animated abstract, again, seemingly from programming. The Fountain, suggestive title here, Caving Wild. Wondering if there is a relationship there, but it looks more just like water, perhaps. Hard to say, but the coloring makes it think of water. The title makes you think of Duchamp, of course. Edition of 5 for $250, selling 1 so far. And of course, here's Ranix Deer. This is Euphoria number 9. This is part of that join drop that Ranix put out, who was on the show last Wednesday. I am uploading the spaces, by the way. Acid Boy with a work here posted on X, as you see, this kind of vortex of rainbow and a black blob here on top. So cool work there. 77 likes, 12 tweets, 1,400 views, doing well. Mika Oladev, good night. So another variation here. You gotta love how Mika Oladev just hammers away at a subject and just does all the variations Mika can come up with here. And I'm sure actually Mika can come up with more, but just doing a ton of different ways of, a ton of different approaches at a kind of a simple subject here. You know, the portrait of a person, kind of a bust of sorts here. Also doing very well. Market seems, again, don't want to leave this on for too long. Market seems interestingly resilient is what I'm trying to say here, from just a views perspective as well as from an actual financial perspective. You will wake up when I say 3. This is Luis Andre Gamma, so get ready. We're not going to stay too long because of the flashing. This is on exchange.art, so Solana. Just let that render here. It's a little intense and it's not sure. There it is. Okay, we finally got it here. There we go. There is the high resolution version. Very intense. Here's another one. Luis Andre Gamma. This is on object multidirectional. This is 80 Tezos, edition of 1. So I think working with fractals here in a really interesting way. Here is Dr. Version, Landscape 20. So cool work here, again, playing with these kind of simple forms here and then filling it with these kind of analog video glitch textures. Just very cool here from Dr. Version, edition of 8, selling for 8 Tezos and just listed. Innovare, and I'm not sure if we've seen this one before, but I thought it was pretty cool. It kind of reminds me of like the Addams Family, but this could just be an old, kids picture that has been completely glitched out. But there's a couple of things I'd mention here, which is it shows, again, the power of this kind of analog video glitch processing as a form of portraiture. We saw it with 8so to great effect. And here we see, it's just a really interesting way of doing portraiture. The other thing I'd notice here is you see these look like, pixelation that's kind of dancing down here with these white, they look like white rectangles, almost like that kind of old school ratio, kind of wide ratio. What's interesting is that's now being transformed seemingly through the analog video glitch process, which kind of bends them a little bit, giving them organic shape. So interesting conflation of techniques there, seemingly. I'm not exactly sure how it's made, but just seemingly interesting conflation. DJ Kuro with a couple here as we continue to run here, an interesting shadow, drop shadow on the, or gradient coming in from the left. Kind of nice and abstract, this piece here. Very interesting. Moltar, this is on object, and this is a edition of 5 for 1 Tezos each, so pretty reasonably priced. And this is another one. This is in Japanese writing, so maybe kind of an anime here, remix, as you see here. So interesting kind of fragment of an anime kind of remixed, as we have been discussing here. The theme of the show, buy now for only 0.05 ETH. And back to the source here. So great textures here, and there you go. And here's composition number 129 by Klaus. More just beautiful violets here and great pixelation here in front. So another interesting addition to the series. Do we have another? We do. Composition number 130. And again, selling 25 Tezos. So Klaus continues to make these great sales here. And beautiful, right? Just kind of beautiful and keeping it interesting, keeping it original, and just aesthetically awesome. And GIFs, easy to forget. Here is Dither and Slava 3. So, of course, Slava 3's work in here, as we see this slicing off of the face here. And this is 5 Tezos edition of 20. So another cool collab. And is this, how many are left here? Only 3 left. So a very rich market there. Like the market's doing really well is what it's tempting to call it strong. It is doing very well. Rat von Ratten, now is this new? This is February 10th, put out by, it looks like relating to Rata. This is Rat von Ratten, First Medici Night. This is by GIU NFT. So maybe a kind of homage to Rata of sorts there. I always love this kind of Mylar protection kind of thing. I've made nostalgia study drawings in the past where I'll incorporate that into the whole work. So very cool to see that here. Selling for $9.50 on primary edition of 5. And here, Bosque Gracias with some more. So now I wish I brought up Bosque Gracias. Maybe the next time I see a Bosque Gracias, I'm going to try and remember to bring up Bosque's comments. What Bosque said is that this red, remember I was saying if you saw last episode that I thought this was digitally treated? It's not. It's how the negatives ended up. So these are simply kind of cutting and pasting negatives or placing negatives. So very interesting. Like, this is what time has done to this negative, and it's gorgeous. I mean, just stunning red there. So another one, edition of 2, 10 Tezos gamers. Almost you can see a relationship between the two figures here. And here, Hey Joe, take a walk on the wild side. And this is 10 Tezos edition of 2. Another cool juxtaposition here. And you see here, kind of backwards, of course, you're playing with negatives, film negatives, so you can flip things upside down. That wonderful backwards writing there. Big fan of that. And here, just another, look at that red. Let's make that large. This is also an edition of 2 Tourist Excess, and just wonderful contrast here. Here you got the clear, here the filled in negative, and again, that incredibly rich red, not digitally treated. Well, I'll try and remember to go back to Bosquet's comment there next time we show Bosquet's work. Mr. Shapeless. So again, back on the scene here, had disappeared at least from my feed for a little while. So great to see Mr. Shapeless back on the AI art front. Another kind of Wanderer structure there, and Kanexapta with an interesting piece here, kind of elaborate AI art piece. Kind of has a bit of a feel of like a Tibetan kind of cloth or something, or who knows what. But here, as you get up close, you start to see those AI kind of lines and shapes. Beautiful colors here. This is Midjourney 5. This is Midjourney V5, and selling for 20 Tezos. Nice work. And here's Little Cakes, edition of 26, and selling at 1 Tezos each, and looking like selling out. So two are now on secondary at 8 Tezos. Let's hit play here. Okay. So there is Little Tezos. Maybe we should call Little Cakes Little Tezos. So anyways, it looks like the Little Cakes character here. And cool work, interesting work. It kind of jumped out at me even when I saw the still version. Having fun here, only at Tezos and selling out. Here's Strange Thing. What's your cereal of choice? So here we see a hard juxtaposition of modern imagery in kind of Renaissance style oil painting. And look at these, incredible. Again, like the flakes of the paint coming off are starting to take a life of their own here, as you'll see here. Very, very interesting. And there is the Fruit Loops within the bowl of cereal. Great color as usual. And you even see the light kind of shining. Here is Lily Illo, GM Deer ones. So again, just playing very simple with a chair that is being kind of reconstructed, reconfigured via AI, seemingly with a touch of architecture for a good measure, kind of dose of architecture in there. And here's some beautiful kind of yellow and violet colors here, and great green shadows here, different kinds of shadows. Very interesting piece. Lily Illo. Here's Anna Dart with a new one, I think just posted on X. And here we again see the paint over top of the portraits here. And finally, we have a work by 0009, Demonic Ego, Demonic Wear. I wonder, this almost looks like a collaboration here, because I'll show you who this reminds me of. So this is interesting. So this is Demonic Ego, and Demon Ego, putting out a work here. And then I wonder if this is a bit of a collab, because I was thinking it was 0009. Street Culture Seeps, 0009, and here again this really interesting photo AI series here. Kind of urban street series from 0009. Interesting. Those could all hang together there. RJ09, Tez Rock Blues. This is from Robert Johnson's diary here. And here we have Mikey Wilson and Roman Dritz. So maybe Roman Dritz is the photographer. So remixes aplenty. Not exactly sure. And so there's the Tezos Rock, the Tez Rock Blues, and there is a Robert Johnson type figure. So very interesting combination here. Not sure who Roman Ritz is. Let's take a very quick look here. So collaboration, maybe a photographer. So a collaboration here. Photography-based artist with Mikey Wilson. Very cool. Give them a follow. And here's Tukes. As we wrap up here, Just about to start the space here, The Remains of the Day, which I remember being a very good movie in the 90s. So here, a new AI artwork, just interesting from Tukes as ever. And here's some physical work. This is Luciana Guerra. Wake Always in Fright is my last oil painting on canvas, 140 by 160, not minted. So if you're interested, inquire. So cool oil painting from Luciana Guerra. Mirko Barici, this was on Instagram, my work Babel solo show. Look at how beautiful. You know, what's going on Instagram, I continue to find incredibly noteworthy, because what I'm seeing here is it's just getting better and better. Like, you see this kind of mark making. This is the kind of mark making, this brushwork here, that I'm just kind of used to seeing in really good galleries. Like, what is it called? What is it called? There's a very famous gallery here on Oranienburger Straße. What is it called? I haven't been there for so long, but just that kind of work. Like, it's just really interesting, impressive work here. And even the color that you saw on there in the black. Here's Night Gallery, kind of a well-known gallery, I think out of LA. Kind of an edgy work here, but it kind of grabbed my attention. Very interesting work. Who's the artist? Robert Nava. So maybe this is a happy birthday, and this is a work by Nava. So interesting piece here, kind of a Pegasus or dragon of sorts. And this is It's Not Gallery featuring Mary Lou Bell. So It's Not Gallery continuing to find super interesting artists here. So kind of crying, you might say, to the extreme here with these fountains coming out of the eyes. And we have another one from It's Not Gallery. This is Chris Ragnar. So interesting, kind of, not sure if this is airbrush, but kind of, not even sure how I'd describe this, kind of three-dimensional here. Almost has a bit of a graphic design feel to it, but all sorts of stuff. And then you see this distorted feet. It kind of looks like a character, actually. Pretty radical work, Chris Ragnar. And let's just see, can we see how big? This, only 6,400 followers, so not necessarily some huge account. Very interesting. Here is Machine, Kanye and Clipper ranks. So it looks like Kanye West getting a haircut here. Interesting use of black here being painted in. I'm not sure if we have video on that. And we see the process a little bit and there you see, and there is the original. So interestingly distorted there too. Super interesting as usual from Machine. Maggie Margaret Cowles, Bar Pimentel, Barcelona, January 2024, 6x8. So another just interesting work with food as the subject matter. A great subject, as we see here. Just adore these tables full of food and objects. Just brilliant. Parsa Mostagim, Greasy Endeavors. So here, kind of a homage to fast food and Coca-Cola and everything done in CGI, 6,480 by 8,100, massive file from Parsa Mostagim. Very cool work here. So that, my friends, is your show. Thank you for joining me. Hopefully I see you at the Twitter space. It'll probably already have happened by the time you see this, almost guaranteed. But until next time, take care.